All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the next episode in How Ambition Uses Ambition. We are going to get started here shortly. Going to let a few more people trickle in. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are super excited to have Chris with us here. We're going to introduce him in just a moment, but thanks for joining our October episode of How Ambition Uses Ambition, where we are going to talk all about onboarding, coaching, and scaling your sales teams. So we are excited to get started, and we'll just jump right in. So today we are joined by our Director of Sales Development, Chris. So we're so excited to have him. If you tuned into our September episode of How Ambition Uses Ambition, you will recognize him. He's a genius. So we're just gonna keep talking to him. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. We are recording, so if you can't stay the whole time or you want to send this to a friend or colleague, you will get a follow-up with the recording after this. So no worries. Because we have so many people joining, everyone will be muted. So please feel free to use the chat. We actually really encourage that you use the chat because after this session, there's going to be an open Q&A. So I'll be monitoring the chat and you can raise some of your questions to Chris. So feel free to send them as we go. Chris is going to be talking through scorecards for new reps, coaching programs, and recognition, all about new hires and how we onboard our sales reps. And the two main questions that we're going to be answering are, how do I onboard and coach reps using scorecards and fair KPIs? And also, jump to that. How do I keep new hires accountable while scaling my team? So to set this up a little bit, we recently partnered with Forrester. And so we learned that in order to successfully onboard new hires, it's important to understand exactly what sales reps expect on the job and what will keep them from having a negative outlook and a desire to churn. So in this analysis, we discovered that it boils down to three main elements: performance feedback, knowledge transfer, and individual training. But part of the problem is that many managers have 10 plus people that they're managing, making personalized goal setting and one-on-one action plans seem pretty unattainable. But that's where sales coaching comes in and what Chris is going to be walking you through today. So Chris, before you dig in, why don't you give everyone a little bit of a backstory of who you are and where the team started versus where it is now? And I'll stop sharing my screen, let you share yours.
Cool. Thanks, Danielle. Before I share my screen, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself and then ambition and kind of how we've progressed in 2021. As you noticed, based on the title, we've quadrupled the SDR function at the business. And the product really helped us do that well and continue to scale in a really effective way. And so we'll go into some of the intricacies of that. But one piece of my background that I think is always important to mention is that before I came to work for Ambition, I was actually an Ambition customer. So it's sitting in the same seat as many of you. We also have some prospects on this call who may be looking into Ambition. So I've been in your shoes before, saw the needs and the pains that it solved for me as a manager of a sales team, and now have the pleasure of selling the tool as well. So just a little bit of context there, but yeah, so in January of 2021, we started the year with 3 SDRs on the team. And so we were looking at the numbers from 2020 as a whole and said, hey, this outbound function, while it's small within the organization, the numbers work out. We need to scale this group in 2021. And so fast forward year to date, we are at 12 SDRs on the team and are spread out all across the country. We've got probably half the team in California, and then the rest are kind of spread throughout the US. And so it's a lot of people to bring on in a short amount of time. And so today what I'm going to walk through is some of the different features within Ambition that allow us to onboard folks quickly and have them, to be contributors very early on your team. And, one other thing that I'll mention just to kind of tee this conversation up is when Danielle and I were talking about, this session and prep, we were talking about in the industry, there's so much conversation going on right now about the Great Recession, right? All about all of these people leaving companies. And while that is true, there's a lot of conversation going on that. There's not enough conversation going on about how many people are hiring now and how difficult it can be to effectively onboard while we're all remote, right? And so hopefully today you can take away some learnings on how we did that well this year. So let's get right into it. So the first thing on the agenda to talk through, if you've used Ambition before, you are familiar with our scorecards function. So the purpose of scorecards is to give you a real-time insight into how each of your reps are performing on the team. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you can get a quick visual on one of my current reps on the team and what their scorecard looks like. So this is live data. So this is Jack's scorecard. Jack is based in San Diego, and we're looking at his scorecard numbers from yesterday. So basically the importance of a scorecard for Jack. Now this is looking at his daily activity scorecard. So we're telling him, and Jack's one of our newer onboarding reps, we're telling him, these are the metrics that we want you to achieve on a daily basis. And if you do so, that's going to constitute a good day for you. So you'll notice up here in the top right, we've got activity score, and then we've got an objective score. So the activity score is on a daily basis, and the objective score, as many of you know, is on a monthly basis. And so the metrics that we have Jack controlling and shooting for on a daily basis would be his calls, his emails, his call connects, and then the talk time that's associated with those conversations, just to make sure that we're maintaining a good balance between quantity and quality in those metrics. And so one thing that's important to note here is when you're an onboarding rep, obviously you're not going to be held to the same standards as somebody on the team who's a veteran rep, right? So the scorecard that you're looking at right here is very different between Jack and then someone else on my team like Nolan, who's been around for 9+ months. And so that's really important from the get-go, is to make sure that we dial in the metrics correctly that we're looking for Jack to achieve early on in his tenure as an SDR. One of the things that we're going to talk about quite a bit here in a few minutes is just the value of small wins and recognizing that. And so that's what's important here, is that we're putting in front of Jack something that's very achievable for him, so that he knows at the end of each day, he might not have closed the deal or set a meeting or anything like that, but at least he's having control over the metrics that he can control and seeing some small wins because of that. So again, this is a look at a scorecard. You can see over time how Jack has achieved towards these goals on a daily basis. And just so those of you who aren't familiar with Ambition know, we can choose to put in this scorecard whatever metrics that you feel are important for your team. So you may not be in a SDR focused organization. So those metrics may look a little bit different, and that's fine. Your scorecards can be customized to whatever constitutes a good day in your role. Now, what's also important about these scorecards is it provides this greater super score towards 100. And that way you can have multiple roles within the organization that have different scorecards, but can still compete against each other in competitions, since they're just based on that 0 to 100 score. And so again, we're going to talk about competitions here in just a minute, but that allows us to enter Jack into a competition and go against somebody who's been in this role for a year plus and still be able to compete and make it fair. All right. So this is a quick look at a rep who is onboarding. And I'll show you if we looked at another rep. Actually, let's go and look at another rep who is not so new. You can see the scorecard looks a little bit different. So again, really the value here, we've got different metrics that you're showing up here. It's so important that we show a new rep what good looks like early on in their tenure and hold them accountable to that. I often talk about ambition as being accountability made easy for me, the manager, because from day one, Jack or whoever the new rep is knows what good looks like in this role on a daily basis. And so they have their own scorecard to look at. They can track that on a daily basis. If they missed it one day, they know what they need to do the next day to get back to it. So that's the quick overview on scorecards. I'll pause here for a second to see if anyone has any questions before we move on to kind of the next section of the webinar here. So again, as a quick recap, why are scorecards important? One, it shows your reps what a good day looks like in the position. And that way there's transparency into those metrics from day one. So they're not worried about, what am I supposed to be doing here? Those expectations are set very early on, which is so important. And then two, it's a different expectation than some of your veteran reps, right? So that way those new reps are starting to get some of those small wins early on, start feeling that motivation, and can start, growing towards those greater KPIs. All right, so that's scorecards. The next portion that I think is really important in this onboarding equation and how I felt like we're able to really onboard a number of reps really quickly is the coaching aspects of ambition. So there's a ton of functionality within ambition to manage the one-on-one coaching interactions. And so I can show you live some of what that looks like. So again, this is live data you're looking at. So hopefully we're not showing too much here, but Trey, this is one of my reps. He's based in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And all of our one-on-one conversations are going to be captured right here within his profile. You see, we're looking at today's activities. And now if we go over to the coaching tab, this is where all of his one-on-ones are going to be housed. So Trey is also a brand new rep. He started with us 2 months ago. And you'll notice right here on the coaching tab, you'll have the agenda for the one-on-one. So this is his agenda already for next week, but let's look at this week's agenda. So I've got 6 questions that I typically ask my reps, and this agenda is going to be sent prior to our meeting. So he'll have time to fill it out, have time to think through some of the questions that we're going to be talking about. And this is really important for a brand new rep to start getting into that motion of the one-on-one, start thinking about their own performance, start assessing their own performance. And so this is something that we meet one-on-one weekly. And this is just his normal check-in. The other thing that we are able to run through Ambition, you can see here, is an action plan. And for each of my onboarding reps, we create an action plan. And essentially, this is their onboarding, certification plan, essentially. So you'll see here, Trey, and then we'll do the due date. So typically we do the due date as 3 months out. We see their onboarding period is about 3 months. And then within this action plan, we've got a lot of flexibility, as you can see here. We can make it a series of questions that we want Trey to answer. We can, link this action plan to a specific goal that he might be shooting for. So maybe number of calls made, number of meetings set. We can also, many of your companies have their own learning management systems. And so if you have links to different classes or courses that they need to be certified on. Maybe it's product knowledge or objection handling, things like that. You can link to an external document, link to an external site to make sure that that's captured here. As you can see, there's a lot of options, but I would say definitely create an action plan for each of your onboarding reps so that they have visibility to what's expected of them in that whatever that onboarding period is for them. So action plans are a really important part of that coaching interaction. So you've got your one-on-one agenda, you've got your action plans. There's a number of other things that we can facilitate here through Ambition, but the importance is, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but coaching is so important in that first 2 months of the reps onboarding. They need a lot of hand-holding. They need a lot of attention in order to get confident enough to kind of run on their own. And so Ambition's really going to help you do that. One of the more important things here is it's going to capture and document all of those interactions that you're having so you can track their progress over time. One of the things I can do on the fly here is show you, we've been looking at a reps viewpoint of Ambition, but I can go in from a manager standpoint and show you what the manager view looks like as well. And so from a coaching standpoint, it's really important for a manager to know, especially for onboarding reps, where can I best help them, right? We're all on the same page and wanting to get them up to speed very quickly. And one of the things that Ambition does really well is help me as a coach understand where they might need some help. And so you'll notice here, there's a productivity tab on the manager dashboard. And this is going to take you to what we consider the productivity quadrant. And once it pulls up here, many of you may be familiar with this, but if you're not using it, I would say definitely do. I essentially refer to this sometimes as a skill versus will quadrant. So essentially, it's going to plot their activity score and their objective score for each rep on this quadrant. And that way you can see, hey, is this, these reps in the bottom left, they probably need to be doing some more activity in order to see the results that we want to see. And so you can kind of figure out, hey, are they just not doing enough activity? Or are they doing the activities, but the quality may still be low, and so they're not achieving the objectives that we have for them. And so again, from a coaching standpoint, we can pinpoint certain reps here and figure out, hey, where do I need to step in to be able to help out X rep? All right, so we've
got a question for you.
Sure.
Can you view activity score as a holistic view of the team, or do you have to go rep by rep?
You can see an activity score across the team. So it'll be an average of your team. So if I click here on my own, it's going to aggregate across the team. So it's early on in the day for my team. So it looks like we are at a 15 activity score so far for the day. So we need to get it in gear. So yeah, but that's a great question.
Next question, is that the average that you're pointing to as well?
Yes, that's the average across the team.
Chris, just while we're on the topic of coaching, one thing that I know that you do really well is, especially with new reps, being able to kind of, and I know we're going to get to like recognition and motivation and encouragement, but one of the things you do specifically with the coaching agenda that I really enjoy is checking in with them personally. And we actually learned that from the Forrester data as well, when it comes to, talking about their Great Resignation and that kind of thing, and how you retain top talent and why we're talking about onboarding new hires. Can you talk a little bit on why that's so important to the sales culture and the team culture, just and why that's your first question before you get into objectives and metrics and data to just check on them.
Yeah, certainly. It's increasingly becoming harder to truly get the pulse on a rep's engagement when you're not in the office with them side by side, right? In the old days, I would have a much better sense of Danielle's engagement level if I was sitting right beside her, right? And so now that's very important for me. Is before we get into breaking down the numbers and talking about performance, let's check in on the person and like human to human. How are you feeling about things? That's always my first question. And it's different for every rep. Some reps are always like, I'm fine, like everything's good. And then others like take that as an opportunity to say, hey, I am struggling with this, or there's some things going on outside of work that are kind of like hindering me from, my full attention at work. And it's a great, opportunity to talk through some of those things. So, yeah, I always like to say that for me in my management style, it's more important that the rep knows I care about them as a human before I care about whatever numbers they're putting on the dashboard. So, yeah, it's a good question.
It definitely shows in the team, that's for sure. I've got another question for you. So how is activity, i.e. calls, meetings, pulled into the dashboard?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jeff. We would pull from whatever data sources that those KPIs are living. And so, for instance, a lot of our customers are using Salesforce as their CRM. We are a managed package in Salesforce. And so very easy to build that metric library from there. But, a lot of other customers have data that are living in a dialer or another system. We connect with a number of other SaaS tools. So, for instance, we connect with Slack, with Gong, a couple others, but we do have an open API. So if there are other databases or places that data is living that we don't connect to via the open API, we can make sure that data gets in the same place, because ultimately ambition is not fully effective unless we have all that data and that really around the KPIs that you care about. So that's a good question. All right, so we talked about coaching, we talked about scorecards, both really key elements on effective onboarding. I think the next one I want to talk about, there's kind of two components to it. One's recognition and the other one is competition. And I think these are really, really crucial pieces also to the onboarding. So I mentioned the importance of small wins. This is one thing that I'm really passionate about, and one thing that I think one place that ambition really shines. Within the system, we call it workflows, but essentially it allows you to say, hey, if this happens, if some action happens around a certain KPI, I want this other action to happen. And so, again, this is really important. So some of the workflows that I have set up for my brand new reps would be when they make their 100th call at the company, right? So just making 100 calls, I'm going to have a notification that gets sent to our Slack instance within the company. We have like a recognition channel. And so it notifies everybody on the sales team, everybody in the company, that Danielle, made her first 100 dials at Ambition, right? It's a very, very small thing, but it's so important for Danielle in her first, few days at the company to be shouted out for something, right? And all the company gets really excited about it. And so within that workflows, we have connections to Slack, to Microsoft Teams. We also have the ability to email you any of these notifications. So one of the workflows that I have set up is when any rep sets their very first meeting, we're going to have an email get sent to the CEO of the company, letting them know, hey, Max just set his first meeting with the company, and it was with, X logo And so that way our CEO is able to reach out to Max, congratulate him, make him feel really special about that achievement early on in his career as an SDR. So there's tons of flexibility with how many of these workflows that we can send. So I have workflows around, hey, they completed an onboarding checkpoint. Let's send some notification and recognition around that. Every time they hit their daily activity score, this is going to go off. And this is really important even for veteran reps, because the sales is tough. Like there's going to be days where you're not going to get the meeting, you're not going to, set a demo, you're not going to close a deal, but you still can get recognized for mastery in the metrics that you have complete control over. And so, at the end of the day, I have an expectation for each of my reps to have 100 on their activity score. And so, so at the end of the day, they still get a recognition that goes out to the team, letting everyone know, hey, Nolan just hit his 100 activity score for the day. So there's a lot of power in recognition, especially in this remote environment. If you're, sitting on your couch and not in the office with the energy of the team, those little things are super important to keeping reps engaged. So I'll stop there. Any questions? Feel free to throw those in the chat about I've got a lot of different thoughts around workflows and different ways to recognize your reps. But if no other questions, I'll keep rolling on.
Chris, could you touch a little bit on, so I know we have a lot of people who use a lot of the Slack and the Microsoft Team integrations for workflows and that sort of thing, but could you talk a little bit about email? Because I think that's probably people are less aware of that one.
Yeah, we've got a ton of flexibility here. So you can have, again, for really any action that happens in the system around KPIs that you care about, we can notify individuals. So like I mentioned, the CEO of our company, you can notify a group. You can specify who you want that email notification to go to. Another example of these type of notifications, I told you about how important the activity score metrics are to me. I have an email notification that gets sent to me from Ambition on a daily basis around 6 o'clock p.m. that lets me know who didn't hit their activity score for the day, right? It's not about, necessarily like reaching out to them and saying, why didn't you hit your activity score? But it's in order to understand trends. So if I see over 3 or 4 days, certain rep hasn't hit their activity score, I'm going to start wondering what's going on there. And, maybe that's a coaching opportunity. Maybe there's something else going on in their world this week. And so, yeah, so that's just another example of those triggers that we can set up via email to really recognize around any of those big wins or things that you want to just keep track of. So there's that. Any of big goals. So we have big quarterly goals for our team, monthly goals as well. Every time you set up one of those goals, I also will set up a workflow to say, hey, let us know when we're 50% to this goal. Let us know when we achieve a certain goal. And so that keeps the entire team on board if they understand, hey, it's early on in the month and we've already hit 50% to our goal. Like this is super exciting. So yeah, it's a good question. All right. And then the last big piece that I'll cover before we go into some more questions, if we have time, would be competitions. So obviously Ambition is well known for our competition engine. A lot of flexibility around creating team competitions, individual competitions, fantasy style competitions to really motivate and create that culture of accountability and recognition within the team. And again, to bring this back to onboarding, I think it's really important to involve your reps who are onboarding early on into some of these competitions to really get that culture going. And so with the activity scores, since they have a different scorecard, again, it makes it so they can compete with the veteran reps. And so I would say early on, it's really important to do team competitions, I would say. And so I pair, a new rep up with a veteran rep. And then, a lot of times I do competitions 2 versus 2. We can do competitions with an SDR and an AE, pair up together and go against them. We actually, a few weeks ago, we did a huge competition that involved the entire company, where we had each rep had a team, and they picked 4 or 5 other people from the company that would be on their team to support them. And it was an accumulation of call blitzes. So it was over a 3-day period, and there were 3 different 2-hour call blitzes that were going on in those 3 days. And then the winner of the total points, won. And actually, one of our newer reps won this competition, again, because the scorecards, we can adjust those so that everybody can compete on a level playing field. So that was a really fun competition. So my suggestions typically with competitions is to have a good pairing of both individual competitions and team competitions, sometimes at the same time, just so that you get that good combination of individual plus team. So that's one of the things with our competitions. You've got a lot of flexibility on the metrics that you want to incent around. I would say my suggestion would be make it metrics that they both have control over, but then are also kind of metrics that represent quality in your environment. So, the example I always give is don't run a competition on the number of calls, because if you do that, you're going to get what you want. You're going to get more calls, but they're not going to be quality, right? So with ambition, you can show multiple metrics. We want calls, but we also want to look at how many times do you connect with someone and have a conversation. What's the talk time on those calls? How many meetings did you set from those calls? So it's got to be a good combination of the right metrics that you care about to incent the behaviors that you want. So we can, there's plenty of competition examples we can talk through if you want ideas. I'm always running new competitions. A couple of weeks ago, we did a sales poker competition, which was a lot of fun and got a ton of engagement. As I mentioned earlier, we have both short-term competitions and then longer term. So for like a quarterly competition, we often do a fantasy style competition. So that's going to have multiple weeks of regular season competition that's kind of head-to-head battles. And then there's playoffs and seeding and all of these kind of things. So it can be very simple, or we can make very complex competitions.
Chris, talk a little bit about the company-wide competition we had recently, because everyone was able to be involved, and the new hires were able to be on a team where they actually won, right? They actually won the competition, I'm pretty sure, all 3 together. But talk a little bit about that one, because that was super, like a lot of engagement. The whole company was involved, and I think made the new reps feel really welcome and really excited, and really just kind of added to the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think the elements to that competition that were really effective is one, we built it around metrics that the reps had control over. So, their inputs, their activities. And so that allowed the newer reps to really compete well with the more veteran reps. And then, I can't understate the importance of the recognition piece, and in our environment, that's the Slack channel. So we're pushing all the results from those competitions, the different leaderboards, right in real time into Slack. And so the entire company is fully aware of what's going on in real time. And so in this case, we paired up with each SDR a number of other individuals from the company on that team. And so we had product engineers, we had people in marketing, we had people in CS who all were kind of bought into this competition. Now, they weren't making calls, but their SDR representative was making calls, kind of on their behalf to win as a team. And that just worked really well. I mean, I think what's important there is like for the SDR to feel that they have support and backing. And, if you've got to sit down and do a call blitz making 90 dials, like it's a lot better if you know you've got 5 or 6 other people who've got your back and are excited about what you're doing. So I think that was the real secret sauce to that competition. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Looks like Jeff has a question here. What about automatic daily stack ranking reports via email? Top 10 dials, top 10 bottom. Yep. Great question, Jeff. We definitely can do that. We have a full, and I can actually go in and show you the leaderboard functionality. So. All right, so a lot of flexibility around these leaderboards. So the first one that comes up is your activity score. These are the live scores for the day so far. And then you have your saved reports, so saved leaderboards that you can look at. And then once you go into your workflows, you can just specify, hey, I want to be sent a notification around this leaderboard, top 10 dials, top 10 activity score, or the bottom as well. So really any of the metrics that you care about, we can run leaderboards around it, and we can send you notifications on those. So good question, Jeff. All right. So I will pause here. I think we've talked a lot about the importance of scorecards, the importance of coaching. The recognition piece is so valuable, competitions as well. I think all of those together create an optimal environment for these onboarding reps to, understand this culture of accountability and encouragement that's so important. And I think once they get used to that very early on, it becomes second nature to want to achieve these high goals and to ramp really quickly, because they feel like they're a part of something that is bigger than them, and they feel really appreciated in their role. So yeah. So Danielle, any other questions that we had from the group or that anyone submitted prior?
I think you pretty much covered. I think the only question that I had was the fair competitions, but you covered that. So I think we are good, and we are almost to time. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, I think we're good.
Great. Well, I would encourage anyone, if you have questions after this, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat about different competitions that you're running or different questions that you might have. Everybody's use case is a little bit different, but this is some of the things that we're using to scale quickly. We've got 7 SDR positions posted right now, so we're just going to continue to scale our team. So it'll be exciting to see hopefully how all these best practices continue to work for us. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate you being on here. Just a reminder to everyone, we will be sending the recap recording after this, but feel free to reach out. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Sounds good.
See ya.
Yeah.